Did we just now witness Hamas's last gasp? This is DaviD TaL. This is a Balagan connection in one of the most beautiful places on the country, but I want to talk about what just now happened. You might be seeing this a day later, but a couple of hours ago, Hamas fired between 8 and 12, we're not sure, long-range rockets out of Rafah, where the fighting is actually taking place, directly into the center of Israel, into Tel Aviv, into Ramat Gan. All of the rockets were intercepted except for one that fell in an open area. 2 people were hurt from falling debris from an interception that took place above their heads. Hamas has actually pulled out all stops and fired, I think, we hope, maybe the last of its rockets from the middle of the battle zone, from the middle of the area that the world is asking us not to fight in. And I think, and me and others, not me only, that we might be witnessing the last gasp. Israel is going into Rafah. Everything that the Hamas tried to do, everything that the Western world tried to do, everything that the International Criminal Court tried to do, did not manage to stop Israel from going in. And Israel is going in very carefully, and according to what we're understanding, strategic strikes, almost surgical, into Rafah to finish off the Hamas problem one and for all. Which is why did Hamas wait? I mean, we haven't had a couple of rockets out of the Gaza Strip for a couple of days, and it's been 4 months since we've seen rockets fired into the center of Israel. Why are they doing it now? I have a feeling, I have a prayer, I have a hope that this is the last gasp. That Hamas has realized that if they don't get rid of these rockets, they're going to end up in their hands in downtown Rafah. They realize that they have to show the world that they're still doing something. They're trying to say, look, I mean, after all the fighting, we can still fire rockets. Not really. And again, there's a feeling that we're coming towards the close of this. The world is putting huge amounts of pressure on Israel to agree to the big carrot deal, what I call. Peace in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia coming to normalization, everything, and Israel will give some kind of, we hope there will be a Palestinian state in the future in return for that. And I don't know, maybe Israel will buy into it. I'm kind of afraid we will. On the other hand, I think everybody is starting to believe Israel's going to finish off. There's a lot of maneuvering going on right now. What's going to happen on the day after? I want to add on 2 more things that have happened that are probably part of this discussion. One, the International Criminal Court that actually was risen up, okay, during the Nuremberg trials after World War II, okay, to deal with ideas of genocide, okay, has actually decided 2 things. One thing is they are going to ask for arrest warrants against the head of Hamas, Sinwar and Hania, okay, for massacring and murder. But they made a moral equivalency to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Minister of Defense. And they believe that if they say, okay, we can tell the world that these are criminals, but we have to give a balanced on this. And actually they made a moral equivalency between a democratically elected prime minister and the head of a murderous terrorist group. That means that the International Criminal Court has lost all moral jurisdiction, all moral compass. Everything that they basically are supposed to represent has literally been washed away by this terrible, terrible, terrible bowing down. And again, in Isaiah, he says it very clear, making the innocent guilty and making the guilty innocent. And Isaiah says, woe to you. Another thing that the International Criminal Court, everybody says that they did, but they did not. They never did call for the ceasefire. The world is saying that they called for the ceasefire. The world is saying that South Africa asked them to stop the fighting, but they never did actually pass down an edict that says Israel has to stop the fighting. And that is something that you don't hear from the press. Because if you go into that, okay, you hear that the press is saying, oh, the International Criminal Court is saying Israel has to stop. No, They didn't say that. They said Israel has to be careful not to commit genocide and has to be careful to allow humanitarian aid to be supplied into the Gaza Strip. They never said stop. But what is the world press? What is the media kind of portraying? That the world court has told Israel to stop. Which brings me to the issue of the humanitarian aid. Huge amounts of humanitarian aid have gone in. You've heard me talk about it. My nephew Sean is sitting on a tank, literally guarding the pier that the United States Army built to bring humanitarian aid through Cyprus to the pier and from the pier into downtown Gaza. So it doesn't go through a border crossing in Israel, it doesn't go through a border crossing in Egypt. And that's to allow huge amounts of humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is coming in. On the other hand, you're hearing more and more people saying there's hunger in the Gaza Strip, there's malnutrition in the Gaza Strip. First of all, no, there is no hunger. And if you listen carefully to what everybody's saying, they're saying there's going to be. They're saying there's a potential of. They're saying there's a possibility. Nobody actually says people are dying of hunger. And there are movies, and I can show you at least 1 or 2 movies that actually show what's going on inside the Gaza Strip. So there's no humanitarian crisis, though all of the people who work for international organizations that are in Gaza that have to bow down to the Hamas narrative are saying yes. And here's the thing. Israel is allowing the humanitarian aid in. We're supplying more humanitarian aid now than we ever did in the past. We're supplying more water now than we ever did in the past. The Gazans are not hungry, and the problem is this. When the humanitarian aid goes in, somebody has to distribute it. And the problem is that all of the organizations that are distributing the humanitarian aid are actually people who live in Gaza, whose parents, cousins, uncles are actually part of the Hamas bureaucracy. So you can't really trust what they do, and you can't really trust for them to distribute the aid. So let's go back. There is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. All the people from Rafah have been cleared out. Israel is going in surgically to deal with what's going on in Rafah, and here's what we're finding. We're finding bodies of captives in tunnels underneath United Nations facilities, underneath a UNRWA facility. We're finding more and more bodies in the tunnels in Rafah that we are actually coming in to take out. So the feeling is this, and I hope I might be right. It's starting to end. Israel has reached Rafah. It is taking out the last, and I think that this last barrage of rockets, 8 rockets, I think, some people say 12, that were fired at the middle of Israel might be the last gasp of the Hamas. And soon we'll actually be talking about what's happening on the day after. Well, we're back. And I'm adding this on to the video that you just now watched. And the main reason I'm doing that is because a couple of things have changed in the last 2 days since I was in the Sea Galilee. First of all, I'm back in Jerusalem, and you can see Jerusalem. And again, this is sunset over Jerusalem. I couldn't have asked for a better place and a better lighting. The second thing is Israel is seriously going into Rafah as we speak, and a couple of things have happened as a result of that. First of all, Israel has moved into the Philadelphia corridor, which is the border between Egypt on one side and Gaza on the other side. And the idea is to create this buffer between Gaza and Egypt for all kinds of reasons, because the main issue that we're dealing with, no matter what people say, is that the Egyptians don't want the Gaza problem to move into Egypt. We also want to control the fact that they will not be able to run out. And then we're going slowly into the areas around Rafah, but we're deepening our hold on Rafah. 2 days ago, a very, very sad event takes place. 2 high-ranking Hamas commanders, the ones who are running the Hamas in the West Bank, actually were targeted by Israel on the edge of a camp, okay, that was outside a humanitarian area. Now, when I say outside, I'm talking about a mile outside the humanitarian area, so we didn't hit the humanitarian area, and we hit the 2 targets with a very small munition. Not a big airplane bomb, smaller munitions that were dedicated to actually take out strategically, surgically, okay, take out these two commanders. It looks like shrapnel from that explosion created a secondary explosion in their encampment, and that blew up, and the Palestinians are saying something like 45 people were killed, which is hard to believe. I doubt that, but a lot of innocent bystanders were killed. And what I want to say is this. Yes, it's sad. Yes, it's terrible. Yes, the pictures are terrible. But yes, it's war. And Israel did not target the civilians. No matter what movie you've seen, Israel did not bomb a refugee camp. We took out two commanders. We took out two high-ranking enemy, but the secondary explosions, and they might have been as a result of munitions that they are keeping, because the commanders are hiding inside these civilian refugees. So we had checked that the chances of civilian collateral damage were low, but a series of events, and again, very sadly, created a secondary explosion and created the problem. Now, the world is making a lot of noise, but one of the things I need you to kind of pay attention carefully to. There was another incident on the border with Egypt where an Egyptian soldier fired at an Israeli soldier from one side of the border to the other. The Israelis returned fire. The Egyptian was killed. Egypt was making a lot of noise. But on the bottom of it all, underneath, everybody is waiting for Israel to finish off Hamas. The International World Court is making a lot of noise, but they have no jurisdiction. Even the American administration is being very careful about saying, yes, we don't want, all of these bad things to happen. But in the end, everybody is waiting for Israel to finish off. Hopefully, our government has the stamina to go through and finish off the problem once and for all. And then we'll start talking about what happens the day after. But right now, we have to get into the center of Hamas. We need to find the last commanders. We need to find the hostages, which are probably right now only, I'm sorry to say, casualties. And we need to finish off this chapter of this event right now. We were putting it off in order to reach a hostage agreement. But that is not going to happen because Hamas doesn't need a hostage agreement. Not only that, Hamas has all kinds of people all over the world fighting its war for them. They have no reason to reach an agreement. They have no reason to capitulate. They have no reason to surrender. So the more support they get from the rest of the Western world, the more they feel that they have no reason to surrender. Think about Nazi Germany hearing support from all over the world and saying, okay, so we're not going to surrender. Even if there's one German left standing at the end of this, we're not going to surrender. And that's a situation Israel is finding itself in. And I've said this, and I'm going to say this again. It's not going to get easier. And the world is turning its back on Israel. The world, people who are reasonable people that I respect, people that I know, are turning their back on Israel right now, or buying into the propaganda, buying into the stories, buying into whatever the other side is saying, because the other side has a reason to say it. And as a result of it, Israel is finding itself more and more isolated. I said this before, there's no humanitarian crisis. There's huge amounts of food going into Gaza. Now, if you want to tell me that the food doesn't get to the right people, that might be something else. But Israel's not to blame for that. No, there's no lack of water. Huge amounts of water are going in. But I'm not sure it's getting, because the Hamas is using its own people, its own population, as pawns in this terrible, terrible war. So that was just added on to the movie we talked about just now. Again, like I've said before, pray for the Israeli soldiers. Pray for Sean, who is in there right now. Pray for all of the Israeli soldiers that are in Gaza. Pray for all of the Israeli soldiers that are in the hills around me. I'm now in the Sea of Galilee, and isn't it beautiful? I think one of the most beautiful places in the world. But pray for all of the soldiers that are on the Golan Heights and on the border with Syria. Okay? Pray for our leadership to make the right decisions. Pray for your leadership to finally get on the right track. And I'm going to say something else. Pray that the Christians in America and the rest of the world who have been showing so much support for Israel continue their support, even though what's coming next is going to be even more complicated than what's come before. Like I've said before, if you want to support this work, there's a link to Gihon Springs. You can donate directly to the Balagan connection down below here. Me, my family would really appreciate that. If you want to support other ministries that are working in Israel. Gijon Springs is working really, really hard. And I was here in Israel, and I got to meet a couple of the people that are doing amazing work, so you can connect that. And I just want to say again, from the most beautiful place in the world, from where everything happened, from the epicenter where the gospel dropped and hit planet Earth and rippled out to the rest of the world. This is DaviD TaL. This is a Balagan Connection saying, hope to see you again soon.